Here you go. But be careful, that stuff will make you stupid. Oh, fuck, I fucked it up.
We haven't had to do one of these in a while. No,
I was literally reading it verbatim. All right, we'll start again. Here you go. But be careful, podcasting will make you stupid.
Fuck you.
Well, stupider than you already are.
I love living in the city!
Meet Steve-O and Bob. They were the only two punks living in Salt Lake City.
Ooh, we come from the east.
What the hell are you?
We're from England.
England.
That's probably why we seem so weird to you, man.
Their only way to understand the world was to be totally misunderstood. And when you're living in the most conservative city in America, do you A, conform?
This rebellion thing you're going through, I understand it, not completely, but I respect it.
B, learn to cope?
I am the future. I am the future of this great nation.
Steven, I didn't sell out, son. I bought in.
Or C,
Is he gonna be okay?
Oh, yeah, he'll be fine, I'm sure. Thank you, though.
none of the above?
I am Aladdin, and this is my lamp. I wished for you, and here you are.
Bob was in love.
You're like a poet, dude. I just started thinking, Salt Lake ain't that bad. I know it sucks and all, but, this is like home,
Matthew Lillard, star of Scream and She's All That. And Michael Goorjian in a film about living life.
If I knew what was ahead of me, I may have stayed in bed. Life is like that.
Never have so many of Satan's followers been amassed on the earth as there are now.
What?
And getting out alive.
666. The mark will be on all of them.
Oh, my God!
With attitude.
I told you those boys were trouble.
What's your major gonna be?
I want to save the rainforest. Somebody's got to fight for them.
Salt Lake City Punk.
Hello. Pints and Popcorn's back. Here I am with Shea, as usual. Excited to be here for this one. We're doing SLC Punk, first timer for me, from 1998. Directed by James Merendino, written by James Merendino as well, starring fucking like this low-key banger cast for like probably at the time, maybe some unknowns in there and whatnot, and but some real good and a lot of good genre guys in there as well. But Matthew Lillard, Michael Goorjian, Annabeth Gish, Jennifer Lean, Christopher McDonald, who we all know as Shooter McGavin, and he's equally as great in this. Devon Sawa, Adam Pascal, Jason Segal. Like, he's probably the one that's had the biggest career since.
Lillard is up there, but
yeah, but Jason Segal's still in some pretty big stuff at the moment. So, and
he hanged on.
Yeah.
So.
And Till Schweiger, who we all know, most of us who love good movies know as Hugo Stiglitz from Inglourious Bastards, and he was fucking great in this as Mark. We'll talk about all that later. Obviously a banger soundtrack as well. So many great bands, and I'm not like a huge, like, I listen to a lot of punk, but I'm not very good at remembering who I've listened to in the past and whatever, but I know you're a lot better with music. But names like the Ramones, Dead Kennedys, Velvet Underground, et cetera. I love that. So
Suicide Machines, Gorilla Biscuits, Minor Threat, Fear has my favorite, like their use of the track that Fear does in this film is one of my favorite uses of music of all time. Yeah. So a lot to talk about here for me.
Yeah, absolutely. As I said, this was a first time watch for me. We usually do films that we've both seen and we agree upon, but we occasionally kind of go with the wild card thing. Particularly, this was your half birthday movie. That's correct, isn't it?
2 halves.
2 halves.
And now it's spooky season, and but the podcast got delayed for multiple reasons.
No, we never shy away from that. Like we used to, when we first did this, like I was about to say 5 years ago. It feels like 5 years ago because COVID, but 3 years ago when we started this during COVID, it was like we were doing it weekly because it was easy because we couldn't leave the house. But now that we've got lives and jobs and things of that nature, you've got a job that isn't traditional in hours sometimes when news pops up. So, and you had a big week, you had a big week on that front. I was in Texas. I got sick after I was in Texas.
And I got sick after the news, but
yeah.
but yeah, I mean, we talked
Yeah.
for like a long time because like when we stopped doing the podcast for just I don't know, it just kind of fell off because of life. You know, it just happens. Which like back in early 2021, we were planning my half birthday movie, and like I had ideas like I don't want to
planning your birthday movie, I think, because that was what was
birthday movie. Yeah, because it would have been March. So
Mhm.
so I don't want to spoil any future episodes, but there's like a couple films that are like obviously like my big birthday movies. But like we did Goon for your birthday,
Mhm.
and that's not your favorite movie of all time. So I was like, I don't want to do my favorite movie of all time. But like, shit, that's my bad. That's fucking amateur hour.
I barely noticed it. I don't know if it was an email ding. It happens. It's fine. As I burp on the podcast as well, you know, we're an amateur podcast, so it's fine. We put some professional notions into it, but yeah, this is your half birthday podcast episode that you brought up almost a month ago, and we're recording it probably like almost a month after your half birthday. But...
At least a couple weeks, yeah.
Yeah.
But it's punk rock. It's just I got a 4.0 in damage in late September, so and I just want the listeners to know, if you're watching, I also forgot to set my background, so we forgot to do that. That's just part of it. It's also it's also just me sitting there spilling beer on myself, like a little bit, like makes sense. But yeah, I think like what Goon means to you, this movie means to me, like in this like it like exists in the same space in our brain of it just being like this kind of like you really relate to it for silly reasons, and so I thought, and since you hadn't seen it, I just thought this would be perfect, and I really wanted to get your take on it because it is such a cult classic, and like, you know, for people like, I don't know, people who didn't like grow up with it, I was just curious to see what they think, because it is its own entity, and especially to like kids who are interested in punk at a young age, like they latch onto it because it's like, see,
yeah,
but again, we'll get to like how that's all a mirage later.
Yeah, that's what's interesting, because I can imagine watching it as a younger man, as the dipshit that I was. Some would say still am, but dipshit that I was as a young adolescent, whatever. You'd watch it and taking it. I can imagine taking an entirely different message out of it, possibly. Even though it's not that the message changes, like it is actually it's a very smart and very nuanced movie. Even if it looks, it's a brief watch, like it's an hour and a half, so just a touch over. Very quick,
perfect,
an easy watch. But there's a lot going on under the surface. But I just know that it's not to say that if I watched it as a younger man, like it was too, you know, the message is very easy to see. It's just I was a little bit of a dumbass when I was younger, so it would have been interesting. And you having watched, so I take out of it the message that, you know, that, well, I mean, the thesis of the movie is essentially that, you know, I liked what Brandy was saying at the end. I know we're getting to the end right now, but I guess we're talking about the movie and what we take out of it. Like that rebellion is your own thing, and it doesn't have to be the outwardly anarchistic, you know, destruction. You know, rebellion sometimes has to be a little bit quieter and nuanced is the true form. And, you know, maybe it's not that I like the message of, like, you know, the dad character, forgetting his character's name, but, you know, he's like, I didn't sell
Steve-O's dad.
Yeah, Steve-O's dad. I didn't sell out, son. I bought in. And it's not like you have to be that guy either, but there is somewhere of a middle ground to that. You can either completely exist outside of the system, and that's fine. But if you want to be, have an impact, sometimes you have to be a part of the system. But you can happily be a part of the system and still question it and do those kind of things. And I really and she did call him out as well. She said, you know, you're wearing all this shit and you're wearing a uniform, which
you're dressing down
to
make yourself look this way. Like when you, and like he later says that, he goes, when Bob's girl says, like, oh, or Bob shit goes, oh, she's a rich girl. And he goes, yeah, I guess I am too. And that's like the first time you really think about it. Oh yeah, he is a lawyer's son, and he's just like, and you would rebel against that, but it's also just like, and then like, dude, we're just gonna do the end of the movie at the start because I think there's so much to take away from the ending, whereas like the rest of the movie is just like a fun romp in a way that shows you both the great side and the frailties of what the punk scene is, especially back then. Like I can't relate to that. Like, you know, I grew up adjacent to it 15 years later from when this was, or even later than that. Like maybe almost 20 years later than it. But in what it was back then, but it's just kind of like that scene where they're kids and they're like in middle school, maybe early high school, and like I have thoughts about the song choice that they picked for that, but it does kind of make sense. I've thought about it a lot today with Generation X's Kiss Me Deadly, for the first punk song that he kind of plays for Steve-O, and it's just like I think they could have done better there, but it's a whole different story, a tangent that maybe we'll get to in the second half. But like, I can't remember where I was going, which is perfect. But
punk rock.
It's just like, it's all about like, for Steve-O, it was like being the most punk that he could ever be, and everybody else was just like such a poser. And like we dealt like, that's what's universal about this movie is there's always people like that in the world. There'll be people after me like that in the punk scene. There were plenty of people before me being that person, and it's just all a facade, and it's all just like, it's just like covered in insecurity, which this whole movie presents punk like as an older person watching it. When you watch it when you're younger and growing up, you're just like, yeah, punk rock, like I want to fight rednecks and I want to, you know, I love this music, and like that's why I like Fears I Love Living in the City, like that the lyrics of that song are just like, yes, I want to be that, like you know, like, and so to watch it older and just like kind of reflect on that and reflect on how I was when I was younger, you're just, man, you just see through it right away. And I totally get a different message out of the movie than I used to, and you know, I'm really grateful for that.
Yeah, and I know it's Merendino, the writer and director. He didn't say, from what I read, it wasn't like an autobiographical thing, but he did write it from his own experiences growing up in Salt Lake City, and kind of based it on a lot of things that he lived. And I really appreciated that kind of, because you know, we all have our stereotypical ideas of Salt Lake City, which they do you know, lean into a lot in this movie, like the you know, the fact that it is a hotbed of, you know, the Mormon religion, and you know, he talks about, you know, we live in a city that's crushed under religious oppression, even though half the people that live here don't even fucking, you know, believe in that religion exactly. But the movie doesn't. What I appreciate about it is, regardless of what the movie and the writer thinks about, you know, that religion or any other religion, they don't lean into any too much stereotyping or anything like that. It is just presented as what it is, but through their lens. You know, the fact that the most important thing that annoys them, it seems at times, is the fact that they can't get fucking anything stronger than 3.1 or 3.2% beer unless they go to a state-owned liquor store, which has its own problems in the police follow them home, or they have to go drive an hour and a half north to the Wyoming and deal with preachers in the liquor store up there. So, you know, the fact that the movie
or the locals who are even worse.
Yeah.
Now, I don't see the Nazis as the devil's army, but just more a gathering of people. What?
Yeah, I did. There was moments like that, and it's funny because I said to you prior to the podcast, prior to us opening up the recording, when we were off air, that there's so much about this movie that I can't wait to go back and watch it and start actually letting some of those scenes and lines bed into my brain, because I'd completely forgotten about that line. But I remember, now that you've mentioned it, thinking watching the movie, just going, it's so far ahead. It's one of those movies that, you know, you watch that was made in 1998 or 1997, about a time that was set in 1985 and at the height of Reaganism and all that stuff, and yet it speaks so much to what we're going through now in many ways as well. So it's always interesting because you can go back and watch some movies that are very, very dated and they just didn't get anything right, but a movie like this. And it's often the way when someone just writes truly from their personal experiences, they latch into, they may not even truly intend to latch into something that's lasting. They're just trying to tell a story of what was, but then they somehow can tell a story of what is to come as well, because it's just human nature and what they're going through is, and unfortunately sometimes it's cyclical. And as we've seen now, and yeah, that line about the Nazis from douchebag number 2 in liquor store in Wyoming, whatever he's credited as.
The neckbeard for sure. And just
Sorry, what? yeah. I have not trimmed for a while. When he said neckbeard, I was like, oh god.
Oh no, he just literally has the
Oh yeah, the one where it's like he shaved everything but the neck. Yeah.
And it's just like, and he's talking about the Nazis and the Devil's Army and all that stuff. And for the record, I did go to 2 different liquor stores before this to try to get Mickey's, and no dice.
Apparently, you needed to take a.
I guess I looked like a Galdaran Indian because they were hiding it from me.
Oh, geez.
But yeah, I mean, and I just like kind of reflected a lot on this movie. It was just like, when you're young, you kind of relate to Steve-O and like everything he's saying is like the anarchy in the UK. The sun never sets on my asshole. The like music, it's punk rock. That's all that matters. But then you like get older and you look at it and you're just like, dude, you're like trying way too fucking hard. And like Bob is that way early on, and you see him mellow out, which, you know, spoiler alert, like he's like in this like okay place, you know, before the ending. And it's just like such a bummer because it's just like, I think, like I said, like this shows the frailty of like being so like invested in like portraying yourself as somebody, like talking about posers all the time and stuff like that. Like I was talking off air about how I really related to Eddie in this movie when I was growing up. Like he was always my guy because it's just like, you know, I'm just going to do what I want. I don't need to like prove how I like the same music as you guys. I agree with all the sentiments, especially like when I was into it, the Iraq War had just started. So I was into all that stuff, you know, like I had, you know, they're looking at a picture of Reagan with a swastika on his head. I actually shouldn't say that on air in case, whatever. I was a punk rock kid, you know, I was a punk rock kid without like having to like Brandy says, it's like, dress down. Like, why would I make myself look shitty to try to fit in? The whole idea of punk is to not fit in. So you're like trying to fit into the scene and be like the coolest person in the scene, and like this will go on forever. Like this will, because there will always be the oldest punk in the group that's telling the younger punks about how it used to be, and then it'll just go on, and everybody needs to be the toughest guy, and you're just like, after a while you're just, and I think that is the thesis of the movie. It's just like, Jesus Christ, like how stupid I was back then, you know?
And I think,
and that's not to say that like the ideals of punk are bad. It's just to say to take them to that level. It's ridiculous.
And I, now that since you kind of brought it up, you know, the thesis of the movie and the fact that it happens, there's always the oldest one. I was thinking of it, I extrapolated it out to every facet of life, whether it be punks or, you know, sports fans or people in politics. Like everyone's always got recency bias about whatever clique or grouping or thing they're involved in, whether it be, you know, they're, you know, diehard sports fan, they're very involved in it, and they, you know, 10 years ago, you know, football was harder back then, and it's always, and you know, 10 years from now someone's going to be saying that about 2020 football, and but the guy in 2020 was saying about 2010, and the guy in 2010 was saying, you know, football was better in the 1990s and the 80s and all that stuff. It's always the same. We keep going through this cycle, and yet we still somehow keep going. And you know, the ones that actually do truly enjoy things sometimes are the ones that just take it for what it is, and accept that it can't always be the way it was, because we learn things, we grow. Like, you know, using the football example, which is a weird one for this, but you know,
No,
football was hard.
it totally makes sense.
Yeah, it's like football was harder back then, but people, guys were also shooting themselves in the chest after their careers so their brains could be studied, and then so we go to getting a little serious, but I'm just saying, like, and that's why we change things, and it happens in every clique or grouping or whatever. Things change sometimes because it actually even if you enjoyed it at the time, it needs to change because it makes things better. And as Steve-O he realizes that to be better for society, he had to, and what he doesn't exactly change his beliefs. He still wants to kind of fuck things up, but he realizes that there's a different way forward, and that he has to show some understanding to the side that he dressed down
fucking
with
childish.
yeah, because you open it,
so obsessed with the concept, like
you become so obsessed with it that you don't actually you don't allow yourself to actually it's kind of like you're actually closing yourself in so much that even the concept starts becoming fuzzy to you, because you're so enamored and holding on to certain things that you started with this idea of what it's going to be, and then you keep on overlapping on that, and you don't allow yourself to learn and grow with the concept that you're a part of, and as such you actually outgrow it, and in kind of the negative way, I guess. And
well, he talks about that throughout the movie. That's why, like, his inner dialogue is amazing, because he's like reflecting on it. I think that's a great choice. Such for good writing.
Yeah,
is to go back and talk about how you were, because he talks about himself in the moment before, like, meeting Brandy. I was like, am I an anarchist? Am I a conformist? Am I beggar Sean? Am I that I didn't know. I didn't know that night. And I probably, like, if I would have, like, known, then I probably would have just stayed in bed. It's like, I mean, it's honest reflection. But before we get too far, I want to like quote, like, I think this is like also kind of the thesis of the movie in a different way, from the band Descendants, from I'm Not a Punk, which I listened to after the liquor store run. But the opening lines are just, I'm not a punk, how can I be? Show me the way to conformity. Try to be different, but it's always the same. End up playing someone else's game. That's what, like, I mean, punks who recognize that right away and seeing through the game is not the same as winning the game. Go back to North Dallas 40 pod. But seeing through the punk game is a big part of it. It's just like a lot of people like buy all the way in, and you're just like, dude, you're not going to be the most punk person that ever lived. It's like, I'm sorry. Like, it's not a competition. It's not what you should base your life on, is being like the coolest person in the entire world. That's what we're trying to fight against, and it just falls on deaf ears a lot.
Yeah. So what I wanted to ask, there's a couple of questions I had with you with this movie. You were involved in bands and kind of,
punk bands.
Yeah.
Well,
it was a punk adjacent rock. I don't know. I'm very bad at I'm very bad at labeling with music. Like, you know me, I love music, and I've got plans for us to have a music pod in the future. But it comes from me being kind of naive about some things as well. But
I mean, I played music. Yeah.
But beyond that, sorry, just to finish my question.
Yeah.
You did grow up in a town that you sometimes have fun with and joke about being a nothing. And a town that you couldn't wait to escape from.
Wish I grew up in SLC, to be honest with you. I hear great things. I've only been to the airport.
Yeah, I've only been through the airport and met a guy from Nebraska and Dana Holtland there as well. So, very weird connection. But so you come from a similar kind of background in growing up in a town that you kind of maybe saw at times as a younger man through Steve-O's eyes in kind of this hopelessness, and especially the bleakness, because they really do a good job of showing Salt Lake City in the death of winter and snow and bleak buildings. The Salt Flats, and God damn it, why won't you?
Salt Lake or whatever. It's called the Great Salt Lake, and they make it look like a men's bathroom in the fourth quarter of an NBA game.
Yeah, it just looks like either that or just a random, like one of the random little dams that you find randomly around Los Angeles.
I thought it looked cool, honestly, and they obviously went out there because it was cool. I think that's why they took the van out there, but I could be wrong.
That was a cool scene towards the end there. But yeah, I loved Til Schweiger's mark, just sink.
Why won't you sink? That's the salt in the
that
water.
fucking hand cannon he's got.
Yeah, dude. When he shoots it, I buy a new one.
It's fucking like Dirty Harry's jealous of that fucking gun.
I will say, like, just a quick side note. I love that scene so much because Bob wakes up and just goes, "Fuck you!" Like, he's like, "Fuck you!" Like that. Yeah, I love that shit.
I have definitely.
What was your question?
Sorry, just how you kind of connected with it from, like, because because like you're growing up in Lincoln and not you've I've known you for over 10 years now, and you at times not had you talk about Lincoln in self-deprecating terms with your youth there, and then you played in bands there growing up as well, so whether it's the exact same scene or whatever, but you kind of, what was it like watching this at your age now and thinking about yourself then, as well as that movie and how that all comes together?
Well, I'll tell you, like, there was one scene that really stuck out to me about, like, how I'm probably an asshole. And that's when, because I think I've almost had not verbatim, and I would never slap one of my friends. Like, it's just not my personality to slap somebody.
I'm trying to think if you slapped me before. No, I've probably slapped you.
Yes, it's different. You're a lot bigger than I am.
And you deserved it.
Yeah, there it is. No, but when Bob starts talking about how much he likes Salt Lake City and, like, how it's his home and stuff, and I've had that conversation with people before, like, what the fuck are you talking about? We're gonna get out of here. We have to get out of here. And, like, everything I have is driving me out of here. And then you just have these people in your life that you're really close with and can be your best friends. Like, and they're just like,
but
they fall in love, or they have, like, they have a good family. Like, I'm from a divorced family. It's like, you talk about love. You're divorced. Love failed.
Well, I didn't want to bring that up, but I was just like, has Shea been in this room before?
No. I might be.
I love you. I love both of your parents, and
I don't know if you've ever been in the same room as both of them at the same time.
I don't think I have.
I don't think you have either. I don't think I would subject that to anyone other than myself and the waiters who serve us. But yeah, I mean, that attitude, like, kind of, like, it might have planted a seed when I was like 15 or 14 or 15 when I first saw this movie, and was just like, get the fuck, like, it's like, you need to get out of here. And then, like, that's kind of like what they're working. I don't know. It's confusing as like punk kids, because they don't really know what they're working for nothing. But that's bullshit, as the movie shows. You're never just, every anarchist is full of shit at the end of the day, because they have no plan for anything. They want no plan, but then when there is no plan.
Oh, what was it at the end of the movie? It was just like, well, the world didn't end, so I had to fucking figure out something to do. Like,
exactly. Like, spoiler alert, I know you give those at the start, but, like, when Bob dies, it's like, hey, dude, you wanted chaos. Here is as big of chaos as you can get in your young life, and you fucking cannot handle it.
Yeah.
So I bet you want some goddamn structure right now. So.
Yeah.
I mean. And God, this sounds like, man, is this airing on Fox News? It sounds like we're fighting against it. But it's just like, I don't know. It's just, I've always been frustrated by the punk scene and just the ideas behind it. And I just love the tenets of it, but it's just never the way you want it to be,
Yeah. And I think that goes for, again, I extrapolated out the different scenes, and I was talking about football as a loose example, but
I totally interrupted that. I think
even if you end up like in the world, it's kind of like politics. You want it to be perfect whenever you go in, if whatever affiliation you have, you want it to be perfect, but there's always going to be imperfections in it. But sometimes the worst people in politics, as we see on a particular side of it, is that they're so, and it's very adjacent to kind of Steve-O's narrow-mindedness that he's like thankfully grows out of by the end of it. But you know, if you're so narrow-minded and so wrapped up in your I like to think he went to Harvard.
He goes to Boston.
Yeah,
that's a gnarly scene.
I had a thought that at some point he's going to be a big shot lawyer, but he's helping out good people, kind of like Jason Segal's character, who's probably tied himself to a tree and gotten in trouble, and like, you know, because
going to Notre Dame, baby,
yeah.
study botany. I need to look into that. I meant to do that last night. It was like, does Notre Dame even have a botany program? Like,
you need to look at if they had
one. Would this shit ass town in Indiana have a botany program? But he's like, I want to save the rainforest, and it's like, that's fucking punk rock, dude. Mm-hmm. That fucking rules. You're fighting the system the best way you know possible, rather than fucking fighting, like getting in a fight with the same fucking idiots every weekend.
Like beating up a redneck every weekend is fine. That's fun. It's a small public service, but it's not bringing out any. There's not going to be any like change that is, you know, consistent and stays. It's not gonna lock in. You're gonna.
Well, that's like completely.
That redneck's just gonna be back the next week a little bit more pissed off, and you're gonna be there again.
That's completely encased in the fight scene at the party they throw. He's talking about who beats up who. He's like, final summation, none. And it's like, yeah, that's anarchy, but like, it fucking sucks, dude. It's stupid.
Yeah,
it's just like you just want to keep getting your ass kicked forever. Like, I mean, I get that it was the 80s too, and it's just like, man, hitting somebody with a bat now, like, good luck not getting 15 years in prison.
Yeah, when they come in with a bat, and it's just like,
they're fighting cops, and it's just like, all right.
Props to, like, I love the filmmaking of this. It was very
it was very good.
The change of pace, depending on what any scene needed, was really good, because there was a lot of scenes he let and where is this? I can't remember who the cinematographer was, but I mean, it's directed by Merendino. But
I can't imagine they had
the scene, like the editing and the cutting of like the acid trip scenes and whatever scenes are happening, or, you know, at the
punk scenes were amazing.
The punk show were great, like interspersed with you know, Steve-O banging Sandy against the wall while, like, you know, and then
ridiculous.
And then what's his face gets on stage, and then someone gets punched.
Bob gets on stage.
It's Bob that's on stage. For some reason, I thought it was. I can't remember Jason Segal's character's name right now, which is my bad. But
I just know him as Jason Segal, young Jason Segal, who's just like, and every scene has that guy too, who's just like, it's just dumb.
It's so funny as well, because I see the way he looked. His character. We'll talk about some of the filmmaking stuff afterwards. Jason Segal's character is, as you kind of touched on, I think he's kind of the most. If you're going to talk about the true, you know, the true nature of punk might be something that's
I don't think
actually something that's almost unachievable, but he's one of the ones that's closest to it, because he does just dress and present himself the way he is. But then, as Steve-O says when he's talking to the camera in one of his many little soliloquies, he kind of says, like, you know, he's one of the most fucking punk hardcore people, you know. Like, he doesn't look like it, because he's softly spoken, but if someone needs to be punched in the fucking mouth, he's like that guy that comes up to him and he just grabs his head and fucking puts it into the wall,
throws it in the wall.
He just goes back to drinking and then like you said, he had no problem saying, yeah, I'm going to Notre Dame, I'm going to save the rainforest. And Steve-O has a conniption about it, because he's like, what the fuck is he doing? Because he doesn't actually understand that that's the most punk thing he can do. And based on what the movie's telling me, I'm not a punk at all and being part of the scene, but how I understand it, like, you know,
the scene is bullshit. Is the whole point?
Yeah.
Like, I fucking hate I hate the Lincoln punk scene, and I say that with admiration and a lot of friends in it. I hate it. I think it's stupid. I think it's stupid everywhere. I think it's like it defeats the purpose.
Mm-hmm.
It defeats the purpose of what we're trying to do, which is to be a fucking individual. But if you're not an individual, right, then there's a Jawbreaker song. I mean, if there's any punk listening to this, they're gonna call me a poser or a pussy or whatever. I don't really care. That's, again, I take that as a compliment, because you guys are all fucking conformists. But there's a Jawbreaker song called Boxcar that is just like, it starts off, he goes, I'm not a punk, you're not a punk, and I'm telling everyone, save your breath, I never was one. And it's like a fucking punk song. And it's just like, fuck yeah, dude. And just like the Descendants thing, Descendants are punk as fuck. But they're going, I'm not a punk, why would I do this? Like, you guys ruined what we were.
Yeah, because it didn't become a scene until like, because the music just happens organically, right? Like that's how music is like it just develops over time, and people have a voice or
like,
something they want to say, and they're angry or attitude that comes into it, and then music starts, and then people like a scene creates out of it, and at the time it's just organic, but then once you start trying to be a part of it, then you start subconsciously copying into it, and unless you're yourself within whatever you're doing, like and that's something I took out of it and we'll get to that later. You continue because you're on a roll.
No, it's just like, it's less about like wanting to be different, and it's more about like showing off to the people you don't like. And it's like, why would you ever waste your energy on these people? And I get how hard it is. I wanted to do it as a child too. I still want to do it. I have fucking I have stupid tattoos. I am growing my hair out. Like, I have giant holes in my ears. I get it. Like, I'm not impervious to
we all take some outside influence here and there, but it's having the self reflection to be able to know and still try to be an individual within that, because we're all fashion trends and shirts that are made and all that stuff we buy at stores are all part of a trend that's happening at a time sometimes.
So, it's just like it feels like a costume sometimes that's like meant to like piss people off, but it's like, then you're not being yourself, and you're not being an individual unless yourself is like your entire like plan through life is just to piss people off, which I do kind of get. I'm talking myself into it a little bit. I just did a Trump right there. I was just like, I did a little Trump. But I get it. I totally get it.
Yeah, it's not like we're saying there's a lot of things that they don't.
It's just like, fuck, like, just see through it, be yourself, and like, don't try to don't live your life for somebody else, especially somebody you don't like, and you're trying to like live like. Guess what? It's like the Don Draper meme. It's like, I don't think about you at all. Like that's like what I want to say to a lot of punkers. Like, it's like, not from my perspective, but like who they're trying to upset. Like, they don't think about you at all unless you're like in line at the grocery store with them. They're not coming to punk shows. They're not. I don't know. I don't know. It's just, I think, and like realizing that that's what this movie was about, like really, like, I don't know. I'm really grateful to be doing this and to have watched it again and be able to talk about it, because it's been wild. This movie has been part of my life for 20 years. So it's like,
and that was what was cool with me watching it for the first time and thinking about myself when I was younger. And it's not like I was ever like, I kind of just, as a lot of kids did in the mid 2000s in Australia, like I grew my hair out and got like streaks through it and kind of went for the surfy look, even though I've surfed like twice in my life and
fucking poser.
Yeah, exactly. But stood up on a surfboard once and
only posers pod, Dave. I gotta think of another ending now.
Yeah. I'm sure there's so many. I mean, we were rolling through quotes off air, and we were like, "There's so many." So something will come to mind. You'll find a moment of
it's
of
fun,
inspiration.
man.
Yeah,
that's the fun part. Like, we're breaking it down, but above anything else, it's just fucking fun, man. Like, it's a fun flick. Like, I was showing you before we recorded, I went to the bar, and like a couple of my buddies who bartend, like, and we were all just talking about it, just shooting the shit on quotes on it, and it's just like, man, that's so fucking fun. Like I told you, it's like a dipshit. Like, instead of a cult movie, it's a dipshit movie. It's like, if you're a dipshit, you probably love that movie.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and even as someone who's come to it for the first time as a 35-year-old, I am a dipshit still, so I loved it. And I was thinking about myself growing up, and like, and no, I've just always kind of but you did kind of try to fit into just whatever. It's not like it was ever a scene or anything. It was just like for me back in Adelaide, growing like in the mid 2000s, it was just going out to clubs. That's all you did, and you kind of tried to, you know, just dress in the, you know, it wasn't really much that you did, but you were still trying to fit into an idea of what you were meant to be, like how you meant to act at the club and all that kind of stuff, and be, you know, how to pick up girls and stuff like that. And it was a way of acting that, you know, it wasn't removing yourself too much from yourself, but I did still try, you know, you tried to act certain ways growing up. And then, you know, I got to my mid to late 20s when, you know, you get married and you do just settle down a bit and you start realizing like all of and you know, there was things that I still believe in, obviously politically and socially and all those things, but you realize that there's, you know, because, you know, sometimes you just want to yell at you know, someone that was saying something stupid in the street or whatever, and, you know, you can tell them, you know, you should protect people that are being abused in the street, but as otherwise, like, there's different ways of expressing, you know, taking part, because you have this thing that happens in politics where people are like, oh, you know, I'm going to abstain from politics, and it's all bullshit and everything else. But if all the good people abstain from it, then it's actually just going to keep getting worse. So you need to be a part of it.
It doesn't make sense.
Yeah, you need to be, as much as, you know, you can say two-party political system is incredibly frustrating and there's huge problems with how it works, but you need to be a part of it to try and initiate change and all those kind of things. So I took a lot of that out of it, that, you know, those attitudes that we grow up with, and because we always lean, the thing that you do in your late teens and through your 20s usually is, a lot of people, when you discover something, you lean into it fully without having the introspection to also look at it critically, and that's what I think that's what the character of Steve-O does, is like, he finally at the end he looks at what he was more critically and what he believed in more critically, and realized that while it didn't change who he was fundamentally inside, and this is what Brandy brings up to him as well, is that you know, he is still who he is, but there's a way of doing what he wants to do so everything, all his goals don't really change. It's just the way he's doing it changes by the end of the movie, which is the journey I think I've been on too, and all of us are still on that. Like, no one's ever, if you ever think you've come to the end of your journey as a human, then you're wrong, because you're always growing, you're always learning, and you're always experiencing new things, and that's kind of the thing to take out of it, because like the more he got wrapped up in that world, the more he kind of closed in on it and didn't allow that outside introspection, which was, so it was good. It was a really great movie to see a character's growth in 90 minutes as well.
Yeah, I mean, he is just like so frustrating to look back at. It's just like,
yeah,
because it's just like, I'm gonna go to Utah and get, maybe it's Southern Utah. I think it's Utah though. I think he ends up going to Utah.
I think it was Utah. Yeah, actually, yeah.
Nondescript,
nondescript Utah
just
University.
like, I got an education, and like my way to tear down the system was to get like really good grades and be part of the system in pre-law, and then just do nothing with it. And it's just like, so you just wasted everybody's time, like, including your own. You could have done anything in that amount of time if you're like trying to be that person.
Especially getting like, did he get I don't know if he actually got a 4.0, but I assume he did. Yeah, he's a
smart kid, and they show that. They do a good job of sprinkling in that he's smart, which I think is
even good. His little chats to the camera, like when he's going on those long walks through the parties and talking about different characters and who they are, like that betrays a sense of understanding of he can understand who someone else is and get a really good understanding of who they are, ironically, without actually knowing who he is.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
and it's like, cool, like, dude, you're like the coolest person in a city you hate. Cool, dude. That's awesome. You're the biggest fish in a lake that you don't want to be in.
Yeah.
Like, that's not dawning on you. Like, that's why, like, that, like, that shows that, like, you can be so smart in so many ways, but you can have just such a complete blind spot to, you know, like, who you're supposed to be, or nobody's supposed to be anything, but like who you could be, and who, like, maybe you should be, you know.
It's also the fallibility of being human, because I mean he finally gives into it a bit when he's with Brandy, but you see kind of that first crack in that facade, like when he walks in on Sandy banging into someone else, and like they clearly have an understanding that they're not together, but he loses his mind because, like, as much as he doesn't want to admit it because he thinks he's above all that, he's still just human, and that jealousy took over.
Like,
and...
no, we had, yeah, he's like, exactly. He's like, no, we had, the anarchy agreement. And it's like, well,
when you see another guy like plowing your girl, it's still gonna, like, then
they're dry hump. I like to think.
I did wonder about that's not something to get into, but I was just like, that would be weird to be banging and then they get punched in the face 2 seconds later and just have your face broken. That would be...
I'm not really going to talk about this. It's never happened to me. I hope it never does, but
yeah. But yeah, then obviously that was the break in the facade, and then, like, he goes on to accept the kind of the going to the party and meeting Brandy, who like that's a heat check of a performance, like, from Summer Phoenix, a member of the Phoenix family that we...
Holy shit! I did not know that. That fucking rules.
I had a look at her IMDb. Like, so I think she was in The Faculty in a small role in a few other films, but hasn't had a huge career. But obviously, some pretty famous family members that are still having, one obviously dearly departed, one that's still having a hell of a career. So, yeah, Summer Phoenix as Brandy, and she, incredible. Like, so for probably what was maybe 7 to 9 minutes of screen time, maybe, like, because it was a fairly long scene.
It is a long scene. I'll give you that.
It was 5-6 minutes on that couch chatting back and forth, and then another couple of minutes in the bathroom. Yeah. But 10, maybe at most 10.
At most
10% of the movie, like, or a little more maybe, but
more.
So yeah, but she kind of just lays out the I guess we'll finish on the first half here before we get into the second half, and we can talk a bit about some other things. But she really, we started off this first half talking about the end of the movie, and I guess we finish off by really talking about what she says, and I love how they shoot this and how it's scripted and dialogued, because it could have come off as very demeaning and
cheesy.
and she kind of, and cheesy, and he kind of goes, like, she's like, I'm not meaning to be offensive. He's like, no, it's fine. It's fine. You can tell that he's bristling a little bit, but he's also like, I can't fucking refute this, like, because none of it's wrong. I just don't like I'm having my armor just stripped off by this woman that's telling me everything that's actually, and she's not doing it, and she really doesn't do it offensively. She's very softly spoken, and she's like,
she's literally.
Yeah,
curious.
and when he says, like, do you like, oh, so you don't like me? And she's like, I've spent like the last 3-4 hours of my party.
This is my party,
and I'm talking to you the whole night. Of course,
that's so, like, that's just so romantic.
I have never crushed on a character quicker than I did. I think at that moment, I was just like, oh my
No,
God.
you texted me too, and I was just like, again, I forgot about Brandy because I hadn't seen the movie in about a decade.
Yeah, you thought I was talking about Sandy, didn't you?
I thought you were talking about Sandy. I was like, what the fuck is wrong with David, dude? Like, she sucks. She is. I like Sandy. It's like, dude, you shouldn't. I mean, like, if she was just banging Bob too, which they kind of talk about a little bit, because Mark says that to Bob. He's like, wasn't she with you? No, that was last week, man. And it's like, yeah, hey, anarchy, right?
Yeah. And obviously Bob was clearly looking for something more as well. So,
well, I don't know if he was looking for it, but it found it.
Well, yeah, not consciously, but subconsciously, because he was definitely open to that experience. Like, you could tell, like, how much his life lit up with that. But but the Brandy, and we got to talk about Bob and Trish and everything more in the second half. But that's like more.
Gotta talk about Bob in the second half. Bob is, we gotta talk about Bob in the second half because
we've done a lot of Steve-O, and there will be Bob and a bit of the other stuff in the second half. But yeah, the end, like, that Brandy scene was just like, it's just so, and it kind of just breaks down because she's just like, she's not part of the scene at all, and she's just curious, and but she still likes him, and he's just like,
she's a mod, right? She's modded Jason apparently, because we see the mod come in and go, "The fuck are you doing talking to this guy?" Like, fucking go drink your other Mickeys, which I wish I was drinking right now, but perhaps it's close. That was punk rock beer to me.
Yeah, I associate that with, like, shows and stuff like that. Not in Australia, obviously, but I mean Red Tins in Australia, I guess, or where I was from.
I'm so much cooler.
It's just as shitty. It's not even made in Adelaide anymore.
Well, Mickey sucks. I'm glad I'm not drinking them, but I kind of wish I was for the aesthetic. I thought that would have been funny.
It would have taken the podcast down a different road as well, I think. The Mickeys, which could have been interesting. It would have been equally as entertaining. Might have been a bit more incoherent. Not that we have a high bar there anyway, but
Low bar.
Yeah. But yeah, loved Brandy. I think that it there's a lot of the movie that is very structured and it's heading towards an inevitable conclusion. It's done the writing. I really enjoyed how it was written and presented, and it seemed quite natural to just how a young man's life and that kind of, because you do kind of just in those early 20s years, especially if you're kind of like not sure what you're doing, you do kind of float through in this party kind of lifestyle and end up at house parties randomly and
you never know how old they are.
Well,
which I think is part of it.
This is like the summer and following winter following his graduation is how I understood it. So he'd be 22, 23, I think, is how I.
Oh, right.
Yeah, because it starts off with him with the big mohawk, and he's like, "I'm going to."
That's 18.
Yeah, that's 18, and then he's like, "I just graduated, and now I don't know what the fuck I'm doing because anarchy." And that's when the movie takes place, for how I understand it. So, depending.
But I love when he asked Brandy how old she is. He says 19, but what does that mean?
Yeah.
Why would that ever matter?
Mm-hmm.
Because this isn't, And he says right away.
Oh, I think I think it's because he's just like, fuck. He's like expecting her to be like a similar age or older, maybe, even though he probably knows that she couldn't be.
We've all been there.
Because
that sounded
because she's so
creepy. I did not mean it that way.
Yeah, no, but it's because she seems so smart and switched on, and he's kind of taken aback by it, I think, and that's why he's just like, okay, so she knows and understands the world, kind of, even if she's like not understanding of exactly his position in it.
Well, she saw right through his bullshit, dude, and she's 19. It's just like, I mean, like, to be like 19 verse 22, like, now that we're older, it doesn't sound like a lot, but back then it was like, the moon and the sun, like, you're that far apart, like. I mean, 19 and 22, like, even in 85, like, that's a crazy big difference. But, I feel like people were also older back then. Like, you had to be, I guess, in a way.
Yeah.
I don't want to get into that. That's a whole different subject for maybe no pod ever.
Yeah, no, we won't. Yeah, that is just the movie it was. So, but yeah, that'll do for the first half. We'll take a quick break. So
it's always a terrible way to do. That'll do.
That'll do, pig. That'll do.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll be back for the second half in just a minute. Shake of the head. Oh, you're so disgusted with me right now.
Oh, man, I'm a fucking beggar now. It fucking sucks.
Wow, you should get a job.
I tried that. I fucking tried that, okay? Hey!
I gotta go. Can I help you?
Yeah, I called about the job.
You called?
Yeah, I want to sell clothes. Women's clothes.
I don't know. Have you had experience?
With what?
Women's clothes.
What the fuck would I be doing in women's clothes? What, do I look like a transvestite? I'm not no fucking transvestite, all right?
No. I mean, have you ever worked in retail?
Huh?
Selling clothes.
Well, if I was selling clothes already, what would I be doing here? I really don't think this is the right way to start a working relationship. You got a real bad attitude, lady. In fact, I don't even want your job. I don't care how much you pay me, because I got integrity. Fucking integrity. Ah! But it's like impossible. It really is. It's like the hardest thing. There's nothing out there for me, It's really tough. And I'm a bum now. That's what I do.
Second half. I did that right into the microphone. That's going to be horrible for the listener. I apologize.
Your crack was in the wrong spot.
Look, there'll be better days. it's kind of like there'll be free beer tomorrow at the pub. You know, there's always going to be better days. They're never going to come for me as far as my podcasting ability to go. Anyway, we're talking about
Christ, punk rock kid over here. Fuck up and die.
We're talking about SLC Punk, and first half I think we spent a lot of time on Steve-O in that first half, and fair enough too, because he is the he's our narrator, he's our little Sherpa through the journey of this movie. But Bob is kind of 1B to his character. Steve-O is the main character because he narrates it and it's through his view, but Bob kind of is right there the whole time and is very important as a kind of foil for Steve-O in the movie, because you see that he's actually kind of a little bit ahead on his journey in a different way as far as growing, maybe not quite out of the punk scene, but just like growing into his own individual within whatever scene he is. And yeah, I really enjoy the character. Heroin Bob, I should give him his full name. One of the funniest
needles.
Yeah, that's one of the funniest things is like when I looked up the movie to I was like Googling to see where I could watch it, which is available for free on Tubi for people that want to watch it. It's obviously got ads, but that's still very good to have a good streaming service that is stable and legal and all that stuff to be able to view it. And the ads are minimal. Like 3 or 4 times they popped up and they didn't last too long, so didn't take me away too much.
A movie of scenes too. It's not
you
be blasted away by the cinematography, though there are good scenes. But
yeah,
the
character of Heroin Bob was really I looked it up and I saw his name and I was like, okay, so just by the moniker, I was thinking, okay, so this is the drug-addled punk but then the movie completely subverts that notion, and both of them, like, I mean, I know Steve-O's dropping acid and smoking weed and whatever else, but like there's not like this, Heroin Bob kind of
fucking mods
betrays that idea of what the scene is, because he's just like he's very much a part of the scene, but is like, I drink beer and smoke cigarettes and that's it. And I respect that because that was me growing up too.
My beer don't need nobody.
Yeah. My booze don't need nobody.
Fuck it.
Rick Dalton, R.I.P.
Nebraska Jim. Yeah, I mean, Bob. This is cheesy, but I remember watching this movie with my dad at a young age because I was like, "Dad, watch this movie." Like, I saw it and I was like, "Hey," like my dad,
Ron.
Ron, shut up. I wish we had like a soundboard where you just be like him, just be like, "Oh man."
We will at some point when we have the place and I have my studio set up properly. Like,
I'll record him when I'm back, or he's coming out for Thanksgiving. But
yes,
Dad loved Bob. Like, I showed him that movie, and Dad loved Bob.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like,
it's
my
hard,
dad was
it's hard not to love him. Yeah, you just.
My dad, well, yeah, I mean,
the
movie starts out with him passing out from punching a mirror, and you're just like, "Oh, this idiot."
That is one of the more ugly infections. And you know me, I am a deep horror hound, and I have seen every form of bursting eyeball, bursting stomach, bursting neck, every form of gruesome scene you could ever see. And that little black pussy hand that he has was. I think it's because you don't expect it, because like horror movies, you kind of go in and you go, okay, I'm going to see some blood and guts. But when I saw that hand just with that little bit of green pus, it didn't even look real. Which obviously it's not, like, you know what I mean?
Named a disease after it.
Yeah. Hell, I was in quarantine, man. They just even named disease. Just an incredibly funny like side story to that movie is that happened, and then they just move on from it as you do in life. Like, nothing's ever as big as it seems in the moment, but it is funny that you just reminded me of the fact they named the disease after him. It's incredible. But we can all relate to that, right?
Sorry.
I don't know if I actually show up
in that. You can cut that.
No, I'm not going to cut that. Oh, we're doing the skin?
There you go. All right. Sorry.
Um,
There's a surprise party for my aunt tonight, who always supported me. I had a mohawk when I was 17 years old, and
God damn it! I should have used that picture for the picture behind me right now.
I don't think you have that. That's in my dad's closet forever, I think.
The mohawk one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe you do. I don't know.
But this one, I just went on your Instagram and tried to find your throwbacks.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
there's a better flop, but you went with the worst one, which I love.
Well, I this one I went with because it was a bit easier to edit it out of the picture. There's the one where you're given the double birds, which is very punk.
One bird.
I thought it was double. Oh no, it is one bird. Yeah, no, it is.
I lived it, kid.
Yeah. But anyway, back to Bob. Like,
yeah,
like,
the
way
Dad
they...
sent me a picture, so I sent him a picture of us potting.
Yeah,
he sent me a picture of my family. But yeah, I had a mohawk when I was 17, and my step grandfather, who I have to remember that people might listen to this, so whatever. Did not like him very much.
You don't have listeners. What are you talking about?
Exactly. But he just goes, "You look like Geronimo," which is very similar to, "You look like a golden Indian."
We're just from England.
You look like you're from England. I mean, you would have said that before that movie came out. I should have said that to him. "I'm from England. Welcome to your nightmare." I had 666 tattooed on my. Steve-O has a non-hairy ass. It's a big part of having an ass tattoo. It's not having a hair. Moving on to Heroin Bob. He's a great character because at the start you're just like, Jesus, this kid is fucked, man. And then it really, like, we were talking about this earlier off air, like via text. Like, you were just like, I knew right when, like, they gave him pills and stuff. Like, when you're young, like, that came as a shock to me. I did not, because I would fucking, when I was 14.
Oh, it would have fucked me up if I watched that when I was 20. I would have had no idea it was coming. Yeah.
When I was 14 or 15, I was like, I don't know that you can't mix booze and pills. Like, I don't know shit about fuck. Like, I didn't know anything. Like,
yeah.
And so, like, that's just like such a passing moment at a party too, of it's just being like, oh, I have a fucking headache. Well, here's some pills, and then you take it, and then you just move on. And you're just like, oh, like, this is all heading to a head. You don't know what the head is. So it was shocking. It was shocking his end, I would say. And he didn't deserve it either.
No, he didn't at all. Like, and I loved how they kind of introduced his character, and it was like he's punching a mirror, and we did the infection, all that. But we also get that narration where it's just like, his name's ironic because he's afraid of needles. He doesn't do any drugs. And it's just like, okay, so this is a very unique character. Like, we're introduced to him in a way that gives us a preconceived notion, and then immediately that preconceived notion is kind of taken away from us, and then it kind of gives us a curiosity into his character. So for the rest of the journey of the movie, we're following his character with this intense, like, I was intensely curious every time Bob was on screen as to what was happening next with him and his burgeoning relationship. His burgeoning relationship with Trish was really fun, and she was an interesting character, but like, just his kind of ability to go with the flow, which was actually growth and him changing and growing and all that stuff, was also like a good foil for Steve-O's ignorance at first, and then slowly Steve-O obviously finally his walls get broken down because they kind of get forced down in a way. But yeah, I loved Bob's character. Was just such a good the tandem of those two main characters was really incredible. I thought, like, that's what elevates this movie so well, is like the characters are just great, and the side characters are great. Even Sean in this small role, Mark, which and I'll get to the connection I've got there in a bit, but just Bob and Steve-O were just great, kind of our guides through this story, and that's often what comes with the best movies, or even this movie it's not an Oscar contender or anything like that, but
great. It's great.
Yeah, it's great. Yeah, I gave it 4 stars on Letterboxd. We'll get to all that stuff later. But my rating was 4 out of 5. Which
I'm so happy this went better than Wolf Creek.
Yeah. You texted me and you're like, "This is going to be my Wolf Creek," and I'm like, "No, I'm enjoying this."
Well,
like, whereas
it is comical, like, if you don't try to understand, but like you try to understand it, and I think that's what made So.
Sorry, I'm fascinated by my label disappearing at times.
I never saw that.
Anyway,
I think like Bob's character is like really like summed up by that last scene too. It's like, and I regret this looking back on my most recent watch, which was last night. But I was looking at it from like such like I knew exactly what happened to Bob, so I wasn't looking at it from that sense. And yet I was still like my heart tingled, when Steve goes night asshole after he puts him down. And it's just like I remember the first time is like finding out that he died. And, like I don't know. Back then it fucked me up, and like now it fucks me up even more in a way because I'm just like, man, he was happy. The whole point of the movie is like we're discontent, so we do all this dumb bullshit. And Bob stopped doing the dumb bullshit.
And we want and they kind of wanted
and
the end. They wanted the end of the world and all that stuff. And then they finally start realizing that there's a reason to go forth, even if the world is pretty shit and there's lots of things to fight for and fight against, but there's still something to be a part of as well.
But that last scene is like with the kids, like when they're gonna play D&D and they're listening to fucking Rush, and like that just hits so close to home with me, like with some of my friends, and like this is so like self-indulgent and whatever, but it was just like this is like we're listening to Rush. This is what we should be listening to. Like we should not like. And it makes so much sense that Steve-O is so obsessed with like portraying himself as the most punk person in the world, because he wasn't the person showing that to people. He was the person following. Like at the end of the day,
he was a fucking poser.
Yeah, because he fucking wanted to play D&D and listen to fucking
Which is
Rush.
fucking dope, by the way. Listen to Rush and play D&D in a basement as a kid. Let's go,
Davo. Telling you, like, there's a better life out there. We need to be like partying and like drinking. I'm not gonna say the other thing because you're married and I'm me. But like I remember that mindset, like when I was like 14. It's just like, hey man, like this sucks. Like we're trying to do this thing, and like we weren't playing D&D, and like my friend, like that's the one thing where I don't really like totally get it. Was like when Steve was like, oh, we were like the people at the lunch table who like talk shit to, and you're just like, whatever, I guess maybe, but like not really. Like you're just people for me, but like in my experience of it. But I still related to Bob just being like, hey, this whole thing that we've all been brought up around to like worship and like want to be a part of and want to be the coolest person in the world, there's this other thing over here. And again, not thrilled about Generation X Kiss Me Deadly to be the one that sells Steve-O on it.
Yeah.
It is a gateway into punk. So I get it. And it was the 70s, so you have to change it because that's
Sorry, I'm trying to Kiss Me Generation X.
Billy Idol's punk band.
Oh, that was Billy Idol's band. Okay, yeah. I knew them from somewhere, like, because obviously I know Billy Idol.
They don't put the lyrics. They don't put the lyrics in the movie. It's just like the musical.
The musical side of it.
Yeah. So, and it's just
at least it's because my one thing was just like, because you know how you watch movies that are set at a certain time, and then like a song will be in the movie and it shouldn't have actually been out at that time. I was like, I've got to double check this. But yeah, Generation X definitely was.
They were 70s, like
late 70s punk. Yeah, so
not punk though. They're like almost like new wave. Whatever. It doesn't matter.
Well, okay, so
it's a gateway into punk, which I think is what they were trying to do.
I mean, Wiki, take it for what it is, but their genres listed as punk rock, pop punk, and new wave. So they were right in an intersection.
Pop punk didn't exist back then. Like that's not a word that didn't.
Yeah, that's a retcon of it, isn't it? Yeah,
it was new wave. It was new wave post punk. I would say post punk.
Yeah, post punk like that. Yeah.
It's too like it's not crunch.
You're definitely a lot better at kind of compartmentalizing that because
I'm just saying. Every time I watch that movie, I forget what he plays, and every time I'm disappointed. I was like,
okay. So my question is, in a movie that came out set at that time.
Oh
no, hold on. This was my thing. Kiss Me Deadly came out in 1981. Their kids in that scene was that song. That was what I was getting to. I think that came out in 1981. That movie set in 1985. That was 1975 when those kids they were 12, 13, right? Maybe in that scene.
I don't know. That's the thing. I don't know how old they're.
He's post college in 1985. I think that's a slight faux pas. That was my point. Sorry.
Easily, and like it would have been too on the nose to play like Sex Pistols.
That was like 1970. I'm just putting a ballpark. Sorry, I'm leaning away from the microphone. I'm sorry to the listener.
But Sex Pistols and Ramones and Clash and Velvet Underground and all that shit was all out by then. You easily could have done that shit. You easily could have played like, and I know it would have been obvious to play the first track off Nevermind the Bollocks, but like,
yeah,
to play that like, and have Steve-O's balls blown off by it versus like something that honestly doesn't sound that far from Rush to me is like the intro. It's just like, I don't know, man. That's one, man. I wonder if but again, you were saying like if it was based off his experience, maybe that's the song that got him into it, you know? And so that's cool. Then I respect it, you know?
Yeah, so Kiss Me Deadly.
Generation X. I think it came out in the 70s.
So the album called Kiss Me Deadly came out in 1981, but maybe the song was on it because I don't see the song listed on it. I don't know the band that well, so that's why I'm trying to.
They're not a fucking punk band, so I don't know them either. That's what I don't like about it. It's like they have
where's the disco Valley of the Dolls? That album had. I'm like struggling to find the song Generation X. Kiss Me Deadly was 19. So I was wrong. So it was 1978. But still, that's my contention. Is that those kids were maybe it was new at the time. Like there's a question. Yeah, okay. That's a little bit more vague, and I can accept that. And that's a minor thing.
Also, Bob says he goes, "This is new." So
maybe that's right on point then. Yeah, and yeah, that was my question. It's not that I was actually looking for a nitpick. I was actually just genuinely curious as to the timing of when they were kids and when that song came out. Because that's probably actually correct. I would say so. That's cool. That actually, because I always like that when a movie is that keyed in on the details. And it's not that it actually takes me out because I think a movie is a medium that tells a story, and if something serves a story and time isn't of the most importance, because while it's set in 1985 and at a time, a song being a year or two away from where it actually was doesn't actually matter for the overall telling of the story. In a sense, it does. Yeah, but it's still good to see it. Like they probably were 14, 15, so it's around that mark. I can accept that. If it had been like 5-10 years difference, then you'd be going okay, but
he just goes, "This is me."
Yeah,
from his buddy in LA.
And yeah, in 1978, they would have been, if he's 22, having just completed college in 1985, you'd say 15 in 1978. That's right on point. That's 14, 15. That's right on point for where they were in that scene. So that's spot on, actually. So again, respect to Merendino and the filmmaking crew of.
Wish it would have been a different punk song, but
yeah. So,
but again, if it was a personal story.
Anyway, I started asking you a question, and then I got sidetracked by that. What song would have you played in that scene? If you were Bob in 1978 walking into your little D&D basement, and you're about to tell Steve-O about this new shit to get into, what would have been the song? You can name a couple. You bought like the songs that would have been around.
I just don't like. I mean, it's so hard because like
I've just thrown this at you. This is question without notice stuff.
Well, you just don't want to be cliche with it, which like playing Sex Pistols would be cliche, playing Ramones would be cliche.
Is that your modern bias informing of that though?
Yes.
Okay.
Because if you play the Ramones in '78, it'll blow the kids' balls off. But I'm saying no. I'm saying like, as like a punk rock kid, like you're waiting to hear what he's gonna play for Steve-O.
Yeah, I guess that is that we're coming up from.
And then he plays this like light ass bullshit, and you're just like, man. To me, that scene for the audience
was that a deliberate move to kind of show how you know, because that's what their introduction to it is, and then they get into it and they have the
exactly, like how
but
like
maybe that's
pop,
a deliberate
pop
move
punk
to
led me to punk. Like I'm not ashamed
yeah
of that. Like pop punk led me to punk. But, like I wasn't like 8 years old like listening to like TSOL or whatever. But I wish I was. Like some punks will have you believe that shit, but whatever. Just like fucking, we all come to it however we do, and it's like whatever. That's a whole different rant. I just don't like. I think now that you told me that it was kind of based off the director's experience in Salt Lake City,
not so much his experience. He says it's not autobiographical. It's just like he grew up in Salt Lake City and knew these kind of people, and I guess he was. I assume he was somewhat a punk fan or part of the scene, maybe, but
adjacent.
not quite.
Maybe he was
Yeah, adjacent. Yeah, I don't know what his experience. But I'm not going from some very limited Wikipedia and stuff like that.
Yeah,
It's not like this movie's a Tarantino movie that has essays and essays on the internet. It's a little bit harder.
You'd be
to find
surprised.
stuff,
I bet people have written about it.
Oh,
but...
I just mean by comparison. You know.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Maybe that's the song. Like maybe he heard that song when he was a kid, and like that's what kind of like led him down the path.
Yeah,
like, I remember
a gateway into
Linoleum by NoFX, which was definitely not out in 1978, and like Roots Radicals by Rancid. Like I had this girl tell me to download both of them when I was 12, and like downloaded them, listened, and it was just like that's what it is, you know. And like I always liked other types of music too, but like that always seemed like the truest thing to me was just like the spirit behind punk rock. And I think like this movie has that too. It shows that like, hey, there's this spirit behind this. There's this energy that's like, it's not one person or one band or anything like that. It's just like the idea behind like wanting to be different but like finding people that are different and like being able to connect with them. But since you're different, you don't sit around a coffee table and drink red wine. You smash into each other in a pit. Like, you know, I think that, I don't know. I knew I was going to get choked up at some point on this podcast, but
yeah, because there is there is a heart to it as well. I know we, you know, talked about the critical side of what the movie was saying in the first half, but there is like any community and scene or whatever that you're a part of. There's a reason you're a part of this, because you find community, and as humans, we love community, and especially as young men, young women, whatever it may be, when you know, you first leave the nest, so to speak. Even if you like Steve-O,
even if you're still in the nest,
yeah, and Steve-O's, you know, giving his parents the bird and saying, "Hey, I'm 18, fuck you," like, you know, he wants to get out of it, but then the first thing you do when you get out of it is immediately find a community, because you're not used to being out on your own, and so you look for it. Now, like, you know, we're in our 30s and we're a bit like, you know, while we still enjoy community and going to bars or whatever, and, you know, watching games with our like-minded people, we're still a little bit more okay.
I actually don't even like it, to be honest with you. But that's that punk rock thing that I was talking about. It's just like I hate hive mind. I hate, like, I just.
Well, no, I mean the positive sides of community, when we find people that can be similar to, you know, you and me and a couple of friends that we are close with can go to a bar and enjoy ourselves and be a part of our own community. And that's a 30s thing, whereas in your 20s you're looking for you kind of look for bigger groups, because that's what you know, when you go to school, it's all a big group around, like there's lots of people at school.
But that's why it's so like hypocritical, is like, I mean, it's just like you're trying to be an individual, but
you're also trying to be an individual within a scene that
you're trying to impress people by being the most individual. And it's like, once again, like it goes back to what I was talking about in the first half, like if you're living your life to try to do something for somebody else, then like that's the least of individual. I don't know. It's just weird.
Like, but the movie does it, and that's what's great about it. That's what's great about this little movie, is like this thing that I hadn't even, you know, you brought it up to, and Andrea's seen it. She loves it too, by the way. I thought I'd bring that up.
Amazing.
Because I brought it up to her. I was just like, we're doing this movie. She's like, oh yeah, I like that movie. And I was, and and she was like, had you not even heard of it? I was like, it just, and this is the thing between Australia and here, is like, we're just while there's a lot of similarities between our countries, there's a lot of differences. And it's just not a movie that had any of my friends in Australia ever talked about or anything like that. And even here, it only made 300 or 400,000 at the box office. Like it's a movie that's grown on the cult the word of mouth stuff over the years.
It's huge. It's huge within punk culture, obviously. Like,
Yeah.
and obviously, a lot of punks hate it. That's what you do. Steve-O would hate this movie. Yeah, that's what you do. Like, it's just.
That would have
And
been
I will say, like, the like only posers die like line has been yelled in my face a bunch when I speak about how much I like the film. And it is not good. It is, but Matthew Lillard tried. At least he went for it, and it's just like whatever. You know?
No, I thought his, you know,
I thought it was longer in retrospect, but time is. You view time differently as you get older.
Yeah.
So
I really enjoyed. I thought he really went for it at the end, and I think that's what that scene needed was like him just breaking down.
I thought it was good, other than the line "Only posers die, Bob," because it just lets the antagonist in to be like, "Only."
But I think
posers
that's,
die,
I think,
Bob.
yeah,
It's
but
like,
that's, I
like,
think
you don't get it. Like trauma. And again, that's young people shit too. I'm bringing young people shit into this where I should be more mature about it. But I remember like telling people in high school that I like SLC Punk, and Only posers die, Bob, and it's just like, yeah, well. Now looking at it differently, like again, this was like a fucking teenager talking to a teenager. That's not what punk is. Punk is beyond that.
Yeah.
I mean,
for me, watching it as a first timer as a 35-year-old, I had like that line was just like, that's just him trying. He's literally dealing with this emotion in the moment, and the
only way he knows how to say that, the only way he knows how to deal with how upset he is to call somebody a poser, which is so fucked up.
Yeah.
Sorry, I just stepped all over you.
No, that's exactly what I was trying to get to with that, actually. And yeah, it's we all deal with. That's what I always find funny when people criticize. You know, some movies can get too melodramatic or whatever, but when a movie just is just what it is, and there's nothing crazy about it, and people just go, I wouldn't react that way. I'm like, well, you don't know. You don't fucking know. Don't
you wouldn't react that way to your friend dead in a bed. I guarantee everybody. And like when Steve-O touches his neck and like for a second and then just jolts away, it's like, yeah, that's exactly what you would be like. I mean, to a T, like is how I would do it. And it's just like, and again, it just shows how selfish Steve-O is too. I mean, he's upset about his friend, but he's also just like, his whole thing is like, what am I gonna do? You know.
Yeah.
And again, I'm probably being a little harsh, but at the same time, he's just like, you were my only, like basically saying you're my only friend. What am I gonna do now? Like, what am I supposed to do? Like it was Bob's fault.
Yeah.
Just those goddamn mods. But yeah, I mean, I thought in retrospect, like I knew going into that movie, like that moment, I thought I was gonna have to fast forward through it because I've just been like made fun of about that moment my entire life and just like all that stuff, and it's just really not as long as I remember it being. So
no, yeah, I think it was what the movie needed as far as like it needed to linger on his like how he dealt with that in that moment. And it was only.
But you said you knew exactly what was coming.
Oh yeah, so and that comes from like I as a 20-year-old would have had no idea. I think as someone that's in my 30s and I like reading screenplays and understanding the structure of story and stuff like that. The whole thing right from the start with he doesn't do drugs, he does this. He's really worried about this stuff, how it fries your brain. He has that whole talk about it. When you see him just grab those pills that those guys are like, this will help you, and he's drinking booze, it's like, oh no, this is like the self-fulfilling prophecy. Yeah, David Face. This is like the self-fulfilling prophecy kind of thing that the guy that doesn't do drugs is really essentially comparatively to everyone else in this movie. Like, I mean, he's smoking cigarettes, drinking beers, whatever. A million people have done that. Comparatively to the scene that he's in, he's very clean with his body. But to a stupid degree, in the fact that he ultimately that's an infection that gets named after him, invade his body because he's so scared. Scared. Yeah, but yeah, it just like as soon as he took those pills, I was like, oh no. Because you saw it's like a handful. It's not like a prescribed amount. It's
like in the 80s, it's just like she's like they're basically vitamins. You're like you.
Yeah. And I just knew, I was just like, oh, he's
Because
gonna.
those are pill kids too. His mods were always pill kids, and
Yeah.
like back then, and like they were into the scene, which ended up being like EDM, and like that's they kind of talk about that in that. But, it's a bummer though. Like
It is, yeah. Especially even that like night asshole. Like I was just, I was just like, oh no, like it just all of that, the way it led up to it. I was, yeah. When he walked out, he was like, wake up, and you see him lying there. I was hoping the whole time. I was like, oh, I hope he's not dead. I hope he's not dead. But like, I could just feel it coming. Like this was going to be, if this story is coming to an end where I think it was, that Steve-O has some growth, which we saw at the end. I was like, Bob's death is going to be like, because you saw there was fractures throughout, and we talked about it earlier, like Sandy, him getting jealous over Sandy being with another guy, even though that's very much what he believes in. So there was cracks coming in this facade, particularly with that great scene with Brandy, and how he really realizes there's more to kind of, essentially he falls in love, which is again antithesis to everything he believes. So there's more to life, and there needed to be. It's a storytelling thing. It's almost like the Deus Ex Machina thing. Like there needs to be that moment that provides the closure, and unfortunately you saw the way it just was going to be. I as soon as that he grabbed that handful of pills, I was like, oh fuck, he's going to die. That was just my immediate reaction. Yeah.
Then again, like watching it as a kid, you're just like, oh yeah, you would take that many pills if you had a really bad headache. But now I'm just like, Jesus Christ, dude, that's like two, like maybe take one or two.
Yeah, it's two. Like is the prescribed amount on bottle, and one of the worst hangovers I've ever had. Occasionally, I'll grab three. Like your base ibuprofen, like anything else that I don't know. It's just like you just don't go. Yeah, but he just grabs a handful and pops them like they're fucking Tic Tacs.
Punk rock.
Yeah, and unfortunately, yeah, it's really it was really sad as well though. Like it did, like while I was watching it, I felt emotional watching it. So, and that's the credit to
Even
the
like what happens afterwards too, of like him punching into the mirror and just being like, or not, he doesn't punch it, he throws, I assume a bottle, or he throws whatever he has at it,
mm-hmm.
and like later he like while he's on the toilet, like he's just like, I'm sorry about your window. I was like, man, dude was just fucked up about his dad, and like even like, and like that. I think this movie did a good job of portraying is that like you don't have to be Bob from a bad part of town, or Steve-O whose dad's a lawyer, or this or whatever. It's just like punk is just a thing that like if you're drawn to it, like that's your thing. Like you just get it and it gets you back, and like that exists in a lot of different other places too. And I think this movie does a really good job of like showing like, hey, like Bob came into punk because this was like he had a hard life and like he related to it. Steve-O came into it because his friend was into it and like seemed cool. And so it's like you don't have to be one way or the other. You can just be, I think.
Yeah. I thought what was really cool about it actually was its portrayal of their relationship, and the fact that, especially in the scene in the van after visiting Bob's, father's house, and Bob's father with his issues shoots at them with a fucking double barrel shotgun because he doesn't know who they are.
Cool over the top, but yeah, I get it.
Yeah, but and especially this movie had some low key post-Vietnam kind of vibes about it as well, about how we just didn't understand how to treat people that, in the post-Vietnam world and Reaganism and all that stuff, and we just didn't understand how to treat the people that were transitioning through. But
I got some Megan Punk songs to send you after this too.
Yeah, I'm always down for that. There's that scene in the van and their very raw and emotional chat with each other was very, because even to this day people still have trouble, men in particular have trouble expressing emotion to each other, and that's very in 1985. We still talk about toxic masculinity to this day. So 1985 being almost 40 years ago. Fuck, I'm old. Uh,
fuck, we're old.
I was only
But,
born
like,
3 years
also, like,
later than that, but yeah, it was a really, I just thought it was a really beautiful scene and ahead of its time in a way.
I also love, like, I love that, like, and again, in the punk scene, like, masculinity, like, to this day,
Yeah,
like,
that too. Yeah.
in the hardcore scene, it's like the worst. Like, I don't need to get into it, but it's just the worst, and like, they just alienate women and girls and whatever. I don't need to get into it. Like, anybody who's listening this far gets it. But yeah, like, it is such a, like, a beautiful moment when Bob is like, it's like just like such a window into like what it is to be a young man with all these feelings and stuff like that. And Bob has every right to cry and everything. And Bob's just like, I'm not gonna cry, man. And Steve-O, it as a punker, it just goes, cool, don't cry.
Yeah.
But it's just
in a way,
like,
in a way, the way I heard it was just like if he had said, I'm, I want to cry. Like, I feel like the response would have been like, okay, fine. Like, it just felt like they were like, there was a real emotional moment where it was just like, they were okay with whatever emotion was going to be. And it just felt like a really, maybe I'm just taking on from it what I want to see based on my own prism of my own.
I agree completely.
But
I agree.
I just think that was a really raw moment between them both, that they were just two guys, two brothers, two people that love each other, and they expressed that in the movie too. They were like, yeah, I love you, man. Like, there was like some stuff in that movie for being made in 1997, 98, set in 1985. As I said before, like, we still to this day, it's like, it's okay to tell guys, I love you. I respect you as my brother from another mother, so to speak. And like, when you and I and our buddy Vince and all that, we have no problem with that stuff with each other, but it is something in the wider world is very hard. Like
you said, almost 40 years ago.
I mean, to do that, to have that set in that time and having it made 25 years ago as well is pretty, it's good, and in that movie about that scene that was definitely going to have a lot of people go and see it that probably wouldn't like that stuff is is a good thing to see in that kind of movie. And I think it shows how much deep thought and everything. A lot of the movie is quite lighthearted about on the surface, like, and there's a lot of funny bits in it, as we've talked about.
I mean,
but
it's a comedy.
The heart beneath it was actually very real and great as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think when Steve-O says like, "Okay, don't cry," it means like, do whatever you want.
Yeah, like, he's just agreeing with whatever his buddies. Like, you can be whoever you want to be.
Like, I know you want. Like, I think it was him being like, "I know you want to cry, but you don't want to look weak in front of me. So then don't. If that's what you want." Like, he was so wanted to be there for his friends so much in that moment that he was just like, yeah. Then don't cry. If you don't want to cry, don't cry. And like, that's so cool, and that shows growth in his character because he is so childish throughout the movie. So he drops the F-bomb and stuff, and like, I mean, different era and everything like that, but still not like, we haven't talked about Eddie at all in this, but I always related to Eddie a lot.
Yeah, I liked Eddie. But this is a movie that
Eddie was above all of the shit. And like, that's what I liked about it. Is he was just like, he saw through it, and he was just like, yeah, let's go get beer in Wyoming. But like,
yeah,
you guys are, I like girls. That was kind of, I don't want to, we can talk off there, but yeah, he was just like, I like girls. Like, that's my thing. And it's like, yeah, this music rocks. Of course it rocks. And then like, what, you're gonna call me a pussy for liking it when I say it's good? Like, I relate to that guy a lot. It's just like, it just shows like the lame aspects of punk
and to a wider extent, any scene that puts
any scene like metal like is the same way. Yeah. Actually, metal dudes like happen to be some of the best dudes that I've ever been with. Like, I wish the punk scene was the metal scene. always, because metal dudes know exactly what they look like, and so they happen to just end up being the nicest people in the entire world.
Mm. Apparently, Margot Robbie's like big into metal. Which is wild.
Wild card. Metal Barbie.
She's like talked enthusiastically in interviews because people have asked her, and they're like, whether it be Jimmy Kimmel or Fallon, I can't remember which one, but they're like, "You're into metal, right?" And they're like, she's like, "Yeah, I've got a Slipknot concert." Like, just like, and she's like, "I fucking loved it," and she's like the most smiley, it's just Anyway, I loved. When I saw that Devon Sawa was in the movie, I thought he was going to be in it more, but like his few scenes are quite memorable. So and it speaks to kind of, but
your mom's still taking us to soccer practice, right? I mean,
that's
such like a tiny window into that scene too. Is like playing soccer in 1985 in Salt Lake City, Utah. Is like, oh, you're like, we're all different tribes, but we play soccer, of course, together because soccer is still this offbeat sport. But so your mom's still driving us to soccer practice, right?
Mm.
God, I fucking love that shit, man. That's so good. That's so good.
Yeah, that scene where he ends up, he's chasing his fucking mom around the kitchen with a knife, which is just insane. But it's played off really well in the movie. Like the movie balances the seriousness of the moments with the lightheartedness of what their characters are seeing it through really well. But the editing of that was quite great as well, because it was really quick cut stuff where it's suddenly like there's one split second where it's him with just a knife against his head, and then it's like
or in his mouth, like
and then it's just like he's actually shoving it down his mouth. So it's real acid,
but it's obviously to the side. But
it's real acid trippy and all that. So it was really, and there was a few moments in the movie.
You are Jesus.
and the way that because when we see him at other times, like his green hair is perfectly spiked, and then when he's out there on that fucking chair, it's just a mess, just one big gap that way. And
I'm a beggar now.
I tried to get a job. I laughed so much when he walks in there and he's like 3 meters away from the desk. He's like, "Hey,
hey!"
And he walks up, and then she's like, "Huh, hi," and he's like, huh, walks up, like it's just like,
yeah. Poor kid.
I want to sell women's clothes. I didn't know about women's clothes. I don't wear women's clothes. And there's another probably hard F in there somewhere, because
there's a hard F in there.
But
you know what, lady? I don't like your attitude.
I don't think we're gonna have a good working relationship here.
And again, it's like you can tell
respect to the girl behind the desk, by the way, because she held herself together incredibly well. Probably
him wearing a vest that says "fuck you" to a job interview, so
especially when it's just I rang about the job. It wasn't even like really that there was anything organized. Just I rang up and asked if there was a job here, and someone said maybe, possibly. Probably just drop your resume in, but no, you're going to turn up in a jacket that says "fuck you" and go "hey," and then
And it's like,
this is
that like those 100 hits of acid like turned him into that, but it was just also like that's like what happens to some of these people. It doesn't work out. And again, it shows punk in a very real light. It shows that like it is like you want to be these type of people. Like this is kind of like what it is. This is not normal. This is
I was gonna say it kind of shows that we're all individuals, and some people can have a natural. Some people have a natural ability to handle a certain, the Rolling Stones are still touring, and Keith Richards has done enough drugs to have destroyed the entire planet, but he's still kicking. Whereas Sean, lost his mind at the age of 21, possibly, or whatever they were, and
I think he was in high school when that was supposed to take place.
Okay, so that's where that happened. So just
soccer practice. I mean,
that's right,
it seems that seemed like a high school cop too that chases him.
Yeah,
that's one of them.
I talked about it off air, but my acid trippy kind of connection moment was So we have the character of Mark, Hugo Stieglitz, Til Schweiger's character. That's an incredible, decent role in this movie, and he's very funny. But he talks about how, because he has a lot of money, and there's this great scene that's edited together where, Lillard Steve-O is talking about how he just every time you go over to his house, he just has to tell you about the newest thing he's bought because he's wealthy because his entire family died in a plane crash that he somehow. And the way he tells that story is brutal too. That incredibly well written. Yeah, incredibly well written and told and acted, and that scene was stuck with me because it was just the way he told the story. But Devon Sawa, who was in this movie, was in the first Final Destination movie, and I just had this moment of acid tripping it, like as the movie was going through. The movie's got its acid trip moments, and I just went, Devon Sawa's in Final Destination. He's telling a story about his family dying in a plane crash. These movies exist in the same universe. And then that was how I took the rest of the movie in a way. So
maybe Sean became that. Maybe he wasn't a beggar his whole life and he became that kid.
I like to believe that being the movie set in 1985 and Final Destination came out in around 2000, he banged some bird, and that's his kid in Final Destination.
There you go.
I told you it was very acid trippy that the 2 seconds my brain spent putting that together in that moment was, yeah. SLC Punk, Final Destination, crossover, make it happen. Shay's face.
There was rumor during the pandemic when all the bad rumors were happening that they were going to do an SLC Punk 2 with Lillard, who is my favorite. Who is my favorite Lillard of all time now, by the way. But
we are Blazers fans, so there's your context.
But there was rumors that there was going to be an SLC Punk 2 about like him as a lawyer in his older days, and I was just please, can you just please leave my childhood alone?
It's a movie that doesn't need.
There is an SLC Punk 2 already too, and I hear it's one of the worst pieces. Like it has nothing to do with any of the main characters in the movie and none of the same actors.
It's basically the synopsis is I watched the first minute or two of it and then I was like,
oh, did you? I've never even done that.
Bob is the narrator of it. Like it's
Bob's dead.
But it's his ghost is the narrator. Look, there's some people I went on Letterboxd.
That is worse than somehow expected.
It's Michael Goorjian as well, so it's the same actor, and I think Devon Sawa is apparently in it somewhere.
Yeah, that guy. What else is that guy? I mean, I love Bob, but like
he's done a few things. I know I've seen him. I can't think of it right now, so I'm kind of betraying my own. Let's do a quick little Google right now. Generation X is what my last thing I'll search. So, all right, so Michael Goorjian. Oh, dude, he was like one of the main characters in Party of Five. Connection to Scream through Nev Campbell, Matthew Lillard, same universe as well. Anyway,
a little bit before my time, I guess.
I remember Party of Five because Nev Campbell was one of my top all-time crushes. I think.
Wild Things.
It's not. That's what's crazy is I hadn't even seen Wild Things until I was a late teen.
I've never seen Wild Things.
It's actually it's really fucking good actually. Like the headlines come from the obvious pool scene, but it's actually got a really twisted story. That's why Wild Things is a cult classic because of this. Like cult classics don't get their big. There's certain things in movies like them. They usually is genre things or whatever. But a cult classic sticks because of story, and this comes back to SLC Punk as well. It's like SLC Punk has lasted and become a cult classic. I think having just seen it because of the story, and there's a lot of heart to it. And Wild Things, while there's not a lot of heart to it, there's an incredible story that's quite twisted in Wild Things that is lost in the obvious headlines that came from that movie, but the actual story, like the actual deception and twists in Wild Things are really, really, really fucking fun.
I'll watch that.
Yeah, that would be that might be a birthday movie. That's going to be a birthday movie in the future. I'm booking it. I'm not going to tell you when. It's just going to be a year that I just go, we're doing Wild Things because it's a fucking fun movie and it's a good You've got Kevin Bacon, Matt Dillon, Nev Campbell, Denise Richards. You got a
I
couple
heard
of big...
Kevin Bacon was really good in it. And
Yeah,
don't ever sell me on a movie with Denise Richards.
what's that? and Nev Campbell,
She's
I
not
love.
a good actress.
No, but Nev Campbell is a good
Nev
actress.
Campbell is good.
And Matt Dillon's obviously good. When you have,
Kevin Bacon is good.
yeah, I'm telling you, when you get a guys like that in that kind of movie, it's like a lot gets lost in the shuffle of that scene in the pool. But like, there's actually a really twisted, fun story to that movie. That's why that movie, people will watch it for that scene, but there's a lot going on there too. But got a little sidetracked there. Why did we get onto Wild Things? What the fuck just happened?
Someone in Wild Things from SLC.
Oh, Nev Campbell.
Yeah.
Hold on. Yeah, Nev Campbell.
Nev Campbell, Heroin.
No,
Bob,
I said that.
Party of Five.
Yeah.
You did this. I didn't.
Yeah.
I'm usually responsible for this, but I did not do this one.
I'm derailing. Anyway, we might as well get to the tomatoes. And let me just open up my note because I've got so many windows open here right now. All right, so this one's going to be interesting because I know how much you love this movie, and I did really enjoy it too. And the tomato scores and all that stuff actually are really interesting because there's a wild swing between a few of the different
I'll believe
ratings.
that.
So tomatoes, it only has 62%.
Not that bad. That's better than I thought.
But IMDb it has 7.4. There are plenty of movies I know of that are in the 80s to 90% on tomatoes that are only around 7.4 on IMDb still. So it just shows different aggregators, and Rotten Tomatoes takes in a lot. A big one that I always like to look at is the Google users, because Google users just people that Google it and give a thumbs up, thumbs down. 87% of Google users like SLC Punk, so people that are Googling SLC Punk are generally fans. It's got a Letterboxd, which is a very modern app as far as moviegoers. 3.7. 3.7 out of 5, which is pretty good for Letterboxd as well. A big one that I always like looking back on is the Roger Ebert reviews from when he was obviously, Ebert. Roger Ebert.
I cannot imagine his review of this movie.
No, he gave it 3 out of 4.
Really?
He really enjoyed it, and I'll send you the link after of his review. I thought his review was really
please do. That's incredible.
He reviewed that movie in March of 1999 and understood the assignment immediately. It was really good. I thought his review was really.
It's not a bad movie. That's what I was shocked by watching it in my 30s. I was like, this is actually not bad.
Well, let me read. I'll read the first paragraph of Ebert's review.
Please do.
Yeah. When people adopt a fearful and aggressive personal style, we forget that somewhere inside, hidden by the punk look, the haircuts, the body piercings, the chains, the tattoos, or the gang regalia, is a person who basically just wants to be loved and understood. Telling the world to go to hell is often the response of people who believe the world has told them to go to hell. So and then the review goes on, and he starts talking about the movie and the characters, and he reviews it. But and it's not like it's a long review, but and this is the last paragraph as well. He said, in this season of blaming everything on the movies, a film like SLC Punk will no doubt inspire knee-jerk moralists to deplore its depiction of an anarcho-punk lifestyle. But remember, a movie isn't what it's about, but how it's about it. What SLC Punk is really about is Steve-O's ironic distance on his lifestyle, about the way he lives it and analyzes it at the same time. The message isn't live this way, but look at the way you live. There's a little something there for all of us. For Roger Ebert's had some. I think The Shining was a movie that. The Shining was a movie he famously didn't like. There's examples of Ebert being wildly wrong in movies, but the reason he was so respected was often, surprisingly at times, he got the assignment on movies like that, and I was really surprised. And it's a short read. I'll send you the link so you can read it fully. But just that opening and closing paragraph, you can tell he got the assignment right away, like for a movie that was misunderstood when it opened.
Yeah, I mean.
That one shocked you. You were expecting 1 out of 4, I think, based on your reaction to that.
Well, just like 2 out of 4,
yeah, like maybe just.
I think my reaction to this is on. This is going to be a big point, so bear with me. But I think my reaction to that is a lot of punk kids, they're how. Again, I'm getting choked up, which is not good. But is like how the world views the punk kids. It's like the world is more willing to accept those people than they would ever imagine. And like, it sounds like it should be on Newsmax, but like that just like shows me that it's just like, oh, people get it. They just don't. They just are above it. Maybe that's
not quite above it. It's like sometimes the people like understand like your frustrations with the world. They just compartmentalize it a different way.
They just like handle it in a different way. And I think like, you know, Ebert like criticizes art for a living, or did criticize art for a living. Like that's not a normal life. So it's like you get like being adjacent to reality in a lot of ways, especially when you're like looking at something that, I mean, I'm just blown, like I'm honestly blown away by it. Like I love that. Like that means a lot to me. Like, I hadn't known that until you just read it, and like I don't know, just anything that we could have said in this 2-hour long podcast, like he of course summed up way better than we ever could.
Yeah, that's why he is
I
one
will
of
disagree with him a lot of times, but for that, like for him to like get a subject that I feel like I've been a part of for over half my life, like for him to get it is like, man, that's masterclass.
Yeah, no, it's pretty dope. So when you see, because I know we do this just as a very, it's just a fun exercise. When you see Rotten Tomatoes rated at 62%, where would you be at on it? I'm really interested.
I will preface this with, I totally get that. I will give it.
I don't, to be honest.
I'll give it an 87 from my own very biased perspective. Of course, that's what we do here. We're a podcast about movies we like and don't like, and 87. I'd say solid B. If just that punk, if it just wasn't Generation X, it would be
musical choices really swayed your decision there. No, it's
I think it's really good, but if like somebody was ever asking me like on a night that they're like, hey, if you had to tell me a good movie to watch, I would not say SLC Punk. I would say like if you're like into some, you know.
Well, I guess that's the thing. What about you? No, I was at 85. I think
good.
Yeah. And you know my thing on movies like this is like because we had the similar discussion on Babylon, is like I respect when a director has a vision and a story to tell, even if it's done imperfectly. And I think because SLC Punk is like far from perfect, but I think it like directing wise, it was done really well. It was written really well. Some of the editing and the cinematography in there, while like it's not a movie that demands like sweeping grand vistas like Dances with Wolves or fucking the classics of classic cinema, but it's a movie that all movies still have, good movies have, filmmaking art involved in it, and I think this movie did a really good job of it, even though it was telling a story that didn't demand that. And I think it all came together. And to the main point is it told a story that was very personal to him, even if it's not completely autobiographical. He had a story to tell and a point to put out into the universe, and he executed that really well. And I respect that, even if I don't, I gave it 4 out of 5 myself on Letterboxd. Like I can't even pinpoint why it's not like a 90%. Like, because I think the story, I guess it's just more just maybe some
points for sure, but we're not here to like celebrate weak points of movies.
Yeah. So, but it's just like that's just where I landed on, and that's comfortable.
I think 85 is good for me. That's
not every movie needs.
I don't even know what I gave Wolf Creek, but it could not have been anywhere near that.
I feel like you were generous, basically, because I thought you liked it more than you've since expressed to me. So I think you were nice.
I did not like it, but I am a nice person. So
I think you were nice to me at the time, and then you expressed your true feelings later, and then I got mad at you. So
I'm sorry. That sounds like par for the course of our friendship. I haven't even talked about VAR to you in a couple weeks, so no. Moving on. Punk rock. I love living in the sugar.
Yeah, that song.
One of the few bands to ever be banned from Saturday Night Live here.
Well, that's wild. I had no idea about that.
John Belushi got him on. They played beef bologna or bologna, whatever they say it. And then, but yeah, in the late 70s, they got banned from SNL for life.
Wait, why is that?
John Belushi got really into punk before he passed away, and or like I don't know how you want to call Fear.
John Belushi, famous Oregon student.
And yeah, he got them on SNL in the late 70s, and they played in like a bunch of, well, not a bunch, but like punk rock kids, like 20 of them, like ran on the stage and like
I did the punk thing and yeah.
And so, I mean, that was like, that's another thing is like, this is set in 85. Like, I don't like watching it in like 2003. Like, it's different. It was a different world back then, you know? It's like, you're playing in the late 70s or maybe early, I think it was late, I want to say 78 or 79. But them playing and like people running on stage and stuff, that wasn't a thing. Like that didn't exist. Like if you're watching that in Kearney, Nebraska, and you're like, oh, I want to watch Dan Aykroyd go cheeseburger, and then Fear comes on, and you're like, holy shit! Like, there's no internet to go look at that shit. That's the first you're getting hit with that, and you're like, oh my god. So it's just like that. That's just part of it. That's just part of this movie too. This was just like, it's set in 85. Like, blue hair didn't exist until then. Like, like that's why, like, oh, they're from the mental institution. Like, and those are older people in Wyoming and stuff. But it was still like, we were the first two punks in Salt Lake City, which is so hyperbolic and lame. But it's also maybe kind of true. Like,
well, if you didn't know anyone else, then like you might as well be like now with the advent of social media and stuff. If any of us get into anything that we enjoy, you know, you find Instagram pages to follow and you immediately find a community. But back then, it was literally just walking the streets, going to a bar, going to a show was the only way you were ever going to even hope to me. And if you didn't,
the cops are gonna break up that show, and then you're gonna get arrested. And then like, what's wild to me is like, we grew up in a time where it's like when I went to high school, like the punks and the hippies were way different groups. But in like 1985, it was just like, oh, they just like intermingle because they're just not like what you're quote unquote supposed to be. So it's just like they're all the outcasts. So they all mingle together. Like when he talks to, which we haven't even talked about, the guy in the party scene being also the guy that ends up in Superbad in the Coke scene, which is perfect.
Wait, which guy?
The brother that he talks to about creation and anarchy and all that stuff, who has the younger sister who it's the same guy in the Coke scene.
Jesus Christ, I didn't even fucking pick up on that, but that's great.
Yes, just blew your mind.
Love because you know I picked up on all sorts of shit because I now have a Final Destination and SLC Punk and possibly Scream Universe in my head, but I didn't pick up on that. So
yeah, man.
Yeah.
Just him in a scene with drugs. Give it to me all the time.
Yeah.
It's like, oh yeah.
These eyes.
Yeah, exactly. Steve-O's beautiful. And it's like, that's how it used to be, is like we're all outcasts and like we all view the world differently, but since we're all outcasts, like we can get along. And then like with the internet and like
now outcasts pitted against each other in a way. It's you used to be
I fucking hate hippies, man.
Yeah.
And I think Steve-O does too. He says that in the movie, like when he hugs him, he just goes, you're like, yeah. And I'm overstating like the hippies and punks hated each other, but I definitely had hippies tell me like the music I listened to sucked when I was in high school. And I'm just like, go listen to a fucking 11-minute guitar solo, you fucking flake. Whatever.
Oh, I love the Grateful Dead too. So I'm just a floater in and out of things.
Only posers say shit like that.
Look at the ceiling, you fuck.
You're a poser in every film. Get a Grateful Dead bear tattooed on you, you pussy.
That sounds like a challenge.
Yeah, I'm for it. I'm trying to get you to get tattooed.
Yeah, you know what? I want to, and like I think I do just need to actually start with some little silly ones rather than actually like something grand. Because I have grand plans. I think I actually just do need to start with something like as silly as the Grateful Dead fucking bear or the skull fucking logo or something.
Like a Bill Walton era Grateful Dead bear.
Yes.
Logo.
Yeah. Bill Walton's what got me into the Grateful Dead. So this shows my sports fan.
They suck.
There's a couple of great fucking songs.
There's some good songs.
Yeah.
Fire on the Mountain is good. Black Muddy River.
See, I'm like
really.
Althea is my favorite one. I fucking love that song. A Friend of the Devil.
Terrible.
They just like the songs I put on when I'm like just showering and I just need to fucking chill, man.
Shut up. Play your instruments like they're meant to be played.
That is conformist.
Fuck off and die.
Well, that feels like a good time to wrap this one up. I don't know. Do you have any closing thoughts, or you're good? You're good.
I love this movie, and I'm so glad that you agreed to do it. Thank you for that. I'm glad you enjoyed it, which I was not expecting.
I fucking loved it. I will rewatch it a bunch of times in the future, and that's a testament
a lot of
to
fun, and it's a lot of I don't know, man. It just means a lot to me, that movie, and like I think it's a lot. As punk kids would never ever admit in their entire lives, I think they would agree that it was a seminal moment in their lives of watching that film and just and now to be able to dissect it. I would love to talk to those kids now. But
especially talking about it like 20 years post the fact that 25 years, whatever it is now. Like it's.
But that shit never. All right, we'll talk off air.
Yeah. But still, the fact that it's still relevant as well, like the fact that I found relevance in some of the little, even though it's stuff that doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things, little little snippets of culture and life that the movie showed were still relevant. And again, this, and I think, but beyond that, the story of someone trying to find identity and finding at first identity through grouping themselves within some kind of group and then realizing that your ultimate identity is who you are and how you live your life regardless of that stuff is like a really powerful thing that you and I both I think attest to the fact that we've gone through periods of our life that you tried to be a part of something, and then even though you still saw as you grow out of it, you still go, oh, I enjoyed that, but it wasn't quite me. And then we realize as we get older, as Steve-O did, that it's just the ultimate form of rebellion. It's just to truly be yourself and hold up to whatever your convictions and your ideals are within this world, and what you believe in is the way to live your life, and the way to ultimately rebel against whatever you are fighting against is to truly be yourself and do what's right by those convictions, whether they be right or wrong for some people on this planet. At least I won't agree with it, but you live in that life. So I think it's a story that even it'd be interesting 40 or 50 years down the track what people are seeing from it now, and it is a story in amongst all the humor and lightheartedness of it and some of the things it shows as far as the punk scene. The heart of the story is a very human story, and that's really cool. So I loved it. Until next time, roll film, pop pints, pour popcorn.